Hello and welcome back to another video. It's just before 5:30 in the morning. I'm at Saijo Station and today I'm going for a walk. But it's a little bit special, this walk. So if you want to come along with me, you're in the right place and you're more than welcome. So first I need to catch a train, which pretty obviously is why I'm at Saijo Station. And the train I need to catch will take me as far as Fukuyama. So anyway, the train is in a few minutes, so let's go and get on it. Okay, so here I am at Fukuyama and the next part of my journey is a bus. So, okay, let's leave the station and find the bus stop. Alright, so it's just over an hour and a quarter since I left Fukuyama and I've just got off the bus and I'm on a small island called Umashima. Well, actually, the island is down beneath me. I'm on a bridge. Let me show you. Like that. And the island itself is down there. Anyway, Umashima, which by the way is written with the Japanese characters for Horse Island, is where my walk starts today. And no, I'm not going to walk around the island, which is what you might expect. I'm going to walk off the island. And sorry, much as I would like to be able to, I can't walk on water. Not yet. So pretty obviously, this big bridge is the key. Now, the bridge in question is called the Kurushima Kaikyo Ohashi, or the Kurushima Strait Bridge. And it's actually a series of 3 bridges. And these 3 bridges, in turn, are actually part of the Shimanami Kaido, which is a route that links Onomichi on the mainland with Imabari in Shikoku. The route crosses the inland sea and it effectively uses several islands as stepping stones on the way. you'll already have seen some of the scenery from the bus on the way here. Anyway, the main islands in the chain are Mukaishima, Innoshima, Ikuchijima, Omishima, Hakatajima, and Oshima. Oshima is where the first of the 3 Kurushima bridges begins, but unfortunately the bus stop on the island is really not so convenient for this walk, which is why I've got off at Umashima, which is actually sort of in the middle of the 3 bridges. So, let me explain my plan from here. First of all, I'm going to walk back to Oshima, crossing the 2nd and 1st Kurushima bridges. Then I'm going to turn round and cross the 1st and 2nd bridges again, which will of course bring me back to here. Finally, I'm going to cross the 3rd bridge, which will get me to the island of Shikoku. All right, let's start walking. So the first bridge I'm going to be crossing today is this one, the 2nd Kurushima bridge. And this has a length of 1,515 meters. And as you can see, there is a pavement, or in American English, a sidewalk. So it is perfectly possible to walk this bridge without getting mown down by cars. The pillars of the bridge and the suspension cables are really quite impressive when you see them up close. But actually, even more impressive than the architecture of the bridge is the view from it, out over the inland sea. I especially like the eddies and whirlpools that the current is making. As you can probably see, it's still quite hazy at the minute, but I think it'll turn out to be quite a nice day later. Actually, probably quite soon. I can see quite a bit of blue sky already. So that'll be good, as long as it doesn't get too hot. Apparently, the temperature in Imabari yesterday was 37 degrees. So, not really the ideal temperature for walking in. Luckily though, it's still only just gone 9 o'clock, so it's still relatively cool. I'll probably be walking maybe 6.5 kilometers in total today, which is not really that far. But even now, although it's still quite cool, it is very humid. I have plenty of water with me though, and plenty of time, so I don't need to rush. I'm just going to have a nice leisurely stroll across the sea, really. At this point, let me just say a little bit about the bridge I'm on now, which is the 2nd Kurushima bridge. This bridge links Umashima, which is where I got off the bus, with a tiny little island called Mushijima. Actually, I say that it links the islands, but it's not really possible, or possible at all in fact, to actually get off the bridge at Mushijima. What I mean is that the bridge I'm on now, the 2nd bridge, merges into the 1st Kurushima bridge at Mushijima. The bridge pier between the 2nd and 1st Kurushima bridges stands right between Mushijima and an even smaller island called Kobushijima.
This sign marks the very centre of the 2nd bridge.
So I expected that there would be quite a few cyclists. After all, the Shimanami Kaido is a very, very famous cycling route. What I didn't expect was that there would be so many people walking. I thought I would be the only one. I mean, really, not that many people walk across bridges across the sea. But I've seen 5 or 6 people already, and I'm only on the first of my 3 bridges. So that's quite interesting, I suppose. I wonder what they're doing. I can't imagine they're all doing the same as me, which is basically just walking for the sake of it. You know, I've never really considered myself any sort of civil architecture freak, but these bridges are just awe-inspiring. They're incredible. I mean, the sheer scale of them, the sheer audacity of the planning, really. I mean, they built bridges across the sea. It's just incredible. And the fact that you can then walk across them, just like you were walking to the bus stop. In fact, literally, I did get off the bus on the bridge. It blows the mind. It's absolutely stunning. I really do think that it wouldn't take much for me to get into bridges as a hobby. And I think it'd be quite a good hobby in a way. So this little island here is Kurushima. And this is the small island which is next to the small island called Mushijima. Unfortunately, I can't show you Mushijima because it's sort of right underneath the bridge. You can see it from the other side of the bridge, but unfortunately, on that side, there's no pedestrian walkway. There is a walkway, or not really a walkway, but some sort of sidewalk on the other side of the bridge, but unfortunately, that's only for motorbikes. So, Kurushima is the best I think we're going to get. Let me just tell you a few things about Mushijima, though. It's a small island, and the area is just 0.07 square kilometers. So when I say small island, I really do mean small island, which begs the question, how big is Kurushima? I'd like to know, but I couldn't really find any information about it. Anyway, from the Meiji period to the Taisho period, which is 1868 to the beginning of the 20th century, there were actually attempts made on Mushijima to cultivate peaches, of all things. But unfortunately, the island is now uninhabited. I would have liked to have seen the island when it was, first of all, inhabited, but also when they were actually growing peaches. I can't imagine that growing peaches or growing any sort of vegetables or crops on an island that small could ever really be feasible. Economically feasible, that is. But obviously they tried it. Anyway, unfortunately, more's the pity, that's all in the past now.
This is the very edge of Mushijima, just poking out under the bridge.
Okay, so the road sign just up ahead marks the beginning of the first Kurushima Bridge, which, as in fact the sign says, has a length of 960 meters. The first Kurushima Bridge links Mushima with Oshima, except the same caveats apply. You can't actually get off the bridge at Mushima. By the way, this bridge, the first Kurushima Bridge, has a main span of 600 meters. And I did forget to say, but the second bridge, which was rather confusingly the first bridge I walked over, has a main span of 1,020 meters. These are all pretty big, pretty significant, and really, really very impressive bridges. By the way, I keep talking about the first, second, and third bridges, and it is true that there are indeed 3 bridges. But at the same time, it's quite possible to regard the whole of the Kurushima Kaikyo Ohashi as one single entity. Now, that might sound a little strange, so let me try and explain. The bridge, the whole bridge, is made up of 3 smaller bridges. So they're all suspension bridges, and in total there are 6 towers. But each of the 3 bridges shares an anchorage with the next bridge. So although there are 6 towers, there are only 4 anchorages. So there's one at either end of the whole bridge, and then one between the first and second bridges, and another one between the second and third bridges. Oh, by the way, the bridge has a total length of about 4 kilometers. When the whole bridge was completed in 1999, it was the world's longest suspension bridge structure. I told you it was impressive, and it really is impressive. I really can't get over how awe-inspiring it is, really. One thing I never really thought about, but I've just noticed, is that most of the bridges on the Shimanami Kaido are built with 2 lanes for each direction. So 4 lanes in total, in other words. But much of the road, in other words, the road that goes through the islands between each of the bridges, is only single lane. I wonder why. The only thing I can assume is that it's a lot more expensive to widen a bridge than it is to widen a road. So in other words, I'm guessing that the bridges were built double lane because it would be ridiculously expensive to widen them at a later date, whereas it's relatively cheaper to widen a road, so the roads were built with only single lanes. If you know whether I'm right or wrong, please do let me know. Okay, I'm getting fairly close to Oshima now, which marks the end or the beginning, depending on your direction, of the Kurushima Kaikyo bridges. Or bridge, if you want. And looking back, all of a sudden that haze from earlier has lifted and there's a beautiful blue sky. And it's become significantly hotter than it was when I set off. I'm glad I brought a hat and sun cream and wet wipes and... No, that's about it really, actually, but I'm glad I came prepared. What I'm going to do when I get to Oshima is just leave the bridge for a while, and I've just seen quite a beautiful looking beach down on the island, so I'm going to take a short stroll, a short detour to that bridge. Not bridge, beach. I've got bridges on the brain now. Anyway, hopefully the beach will be rather a pleasant one and I can sit and take a break for a while. This is an example of what I was talking about just now, how the bridges are double lane and at the end of the bridges they go to a single lane road. So all of this road just here is unused. It's basically extra. I think it must be that they built the bridges extra wide, well, not extra wide, but double width compared to the rest of the road, just so they didn't have to widen them later. I have to say though, I don't really think there's much chance that they are going to be widening the roads. I mean, the road, the whole route is relatively busy, as you can see now, but I can't really see there being traffic jams or anything like that. Wow, that wasn't the beach that I saw earlier, but what a spectacularly beautiful little cove. It's just a shame there's clearly no path to it. Or at least clearly no path I'm prepared to risk taking. I think there might be a path down the spine of that cliff just there. But no thank you. I'll go to the beach I saw first, I think. Earlier, I think I mentioned that the Shimanami Kaido is a famous cycling route, and it is a very famous cycling route. So the Shimanami Kaido itself is an expressway, but along each of the bridges there's also a cycling path or a walking path, as I've just walked along. So it's actually possible to cycle, or walk for that matter, from Imabari to Onomichi, or vice versa. And in fact, many years ago, I did in fact do that with a friend. The cycling path does leave the route of the expressway on each of the islands, but that means that cyclists, or walkers for that matter, can spend a leisurely time exploring each of the islands. Even now, I still remember the salt ice cream I tried on Hakata Island. And yeah, before you ask, I remember it because it was delicious, not because it was strange. Actually, I did see if it would be possible to stop off in Hakata today and try some of that ice cream again. But unfortunately, I couldn't really find a way. Sometime soon, perhaps. So this is the end of the Kurushima bridges, the first bridge in particular, but all three bridges. And this is where the cycle path leaves the bridge and goes down onto the island roads. So let's take it down. I just had a man and his son pass me on bicycles, and the boy looked as if he was only maybe 5 or 6 years old. So he's doing pretty well to cycle this course. I wonder how far the two of them are actually going. Surely they're not going all the way to Onomichi.
From here, you can get a better view of Mushima. Well, you can get a view of Mushima. It's the island that finishes just under the bridge. I have to say, it doesn't look particularly suitable for growing peaches. Here's another view of that beautiful cove from just a little bit earlier. I think the tide must just have turned. Just look at the flow of water here. It's beautiful to look at, but I certainly wouldn't want to be caught in it. Maybe not even in a boat, in fact. So I'm now walking down slowly to the beach I saw originally from the bridge, but this is the view of the bridge itself from that slope. You can see it's quite an impressive structure.
So this is the original beach that I saw from the bridge. It's called Shirahama, which means White Bay. Not an entirely original name, but quite appropriate. The sand is very, very white and very beautiful. It's not that big a beach, but it's very peaceful, and I'm glad I came. Okay, that was a very pleasant 15-minute break, but now it's time to get back onto the bridge. It's great that the slopes up to and down from the bridges are gentle, which of course they have to be for cyclists, but it does mean they're very long. Still, I'm not in any particular rush. It's still only just past 11 o'clock, so I have plenty of time. Okay, back to the bridge. Just to recap, this is bridge number 1, the first bridge. So after this, I'm going to head back to the second bridge, and back to Hiroshima. So, goodbye Oshima. I was only on the island for maybe 30 minutes maximum, really. But what I noticed was just how many people spoke, how friendly people were. I suppose it's what you can call island manners. It's really amazing and quite heartwarming, really, just how many people are happy to say hello, happy to chat, happy just to exchange a few words even. I just wish that were more the case in more urban Japan. Even in Saijo, where I live, which is not really that big a city, it's still quite rural. People generally don't speak so much. And I used to live in Etajima, which is an island, and I found exactly the same sort of friendliness on that island as I have done on this island, Oshima. So I think it really is island manners. But these islands, they may not have all the bright lights and technology of more built-up Japan, but they certainly could teach the inhabitants of more built-up cities a thing or two about human relations, really. And to be perfectly honest, I wish they would. Actually, though, speaking of politeness, I've also noticed how many cyclists will say konnichiwa, or sometimes otsukaresama desu, as they ride past. I suppose it's a bit like walkers in the UK. They generally tend to have time to say hello as they pass, and, well, it seems to be the same with the Shimanami Kaido. So that's quite nice. So do you see where the two suspension cables almost meet, basically in the middle of the picture? Well, that's one of the shared anchorages. This is the shared anchorage between the first and the second bridges. So basically beneath the road there is a huge pillar of concrete, and the cables are anchored into that concrete. So with normal suspension bridges, one block of concrete anchors one suspension cable. But with this bridge, the anchorages between the first and second bridges, and then between the second and third bridges, anchor two lots of cables. So that's why, to cut a very long story short, there are three bridges, but you can sort of regard them as one bridge. Okay, so back onto the second Kurushima bridge. So after this bridge, obviously, I'm back in Umashima. So this is the point where the main suspension cable joins the bridge in the middle of the span, or at least comes as close as it's going to get to the main bridge deck. And then from here it starts its graceful curve back up to the tower. I really do have to say, I'm finding seeing bridges of this size up close really quite fascinating. It's not going to be long until I'm back in Umashima now, and I think when I get to Umashima, I'm going to go down onto the island and just see what there is to see. I have the time, it's still just before 12 o'clock, so I have 5, 6, 7 hours yet. I did read this when I was planning today's journey, but then I sort of forgot about it. But thinking about it, Umashima is also not accessible by car, or at least not by general cars. I think people who live on the island or who have business on the island can actually get off the bridge here, and there is a road down onto the island itself. But I think generally you can only go off the bridge and down onto the island if you are a pedestrian, a cyclist, or if you're on a motorbike or motor scooter. So I suppose it's a little bit special, this island. I did just take a look at a map though, and to be completely honest, there doesn't seem to be a great deal on Umashima. There is a lighthouse, but it looks like it's quite a steep climb up from the coast road. And it is quite warm and it is quite humid, and I don't think I really want to do that. So I will take a photograph from afar, from off the bridge in fact, and I think I will leave it at that. The only other thing I can see on the island is a port, and there are actually sailings to and from Umashima. I don't think they're very regular, but there are some scheduled sailings. So I suppose it might be worth going down and just seeing what the port's like. It might be quite nice and traditional, you never know. So I think I'll do that. To leave the bridge and go down onto Umashima Island proper, you need to take a lift, or in American English, an elevator. And the elevator, or the lift, is situated under the bridge. So I'm walking literally under the main car deck right now. It's actually quite surprisingly quiet, almost strangely quiet in fact. And here's the lift, so let's call it. A nice cute sign reminding you not to get your fingers trapped in the lift doors. And finally, here is the lift. So I'm going to go all the way down to the ground floor, the first floor. I think it might have been worth coming down to the island itself just for the views of the bridge. Looking out from the lift windows now, it does look very impressive. Yep, the view is very impressive. I wasn't wrong. I'm glad I came down onto the island actually now. I thought the lift was taking a long time to come, and there's no wonder. Right, let's go and see what else there is to see. I think I was right about you only being able to come to the island by car if you live here or if you have business here. I mean, this sign says you can't go straight. I'm assuming that means up there, unless you are an islander. So I won't go straight. I'll go down here and see what there is. Thinking about it though, I wonder why you can't go onto the main part of the island unless you're an islander. Is it a private island? Or do the islanders just want to maybe protect themselves from the influx? What influx? I'm not quite sure, but the influx of tourists. I don't know. I can't be sure, but I would say that it's more a question of wanting to protect privacy than a case of the island actually being private. I may be wrong, so please do leave a comment and let me know if you know yourself. There was another sign just there saying you had to turn right unless you were an islander, so I've turned right. I do have to say, it doesn't seem a particularly friendly place. All of these signs are not entirely welcoming, to be honest. But it's not my island. I don't know what problems there are or there have been, so I can't really make any judgment on it. All I can say, though, is that it doesn't feel very friendly. Anyway, I think this path goes down to the harbour, so I can at least take a look and see what that's like. The third bridge, by the way, is the longest of the three bridges, although it's not really that much longer than the first bridge. Anyway, we should be able to get quite a nice view of it from here. Okay, so this is the ferry port, and right above it is the third Kurushima bridge. I don't really know why, but I sort of hoped, or sort of expected even, that there might be a little cafe or something on Umeshima. But I don't think there is. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's the sort of island where there would be. The whole atmosphere does not feel particularly friendly, I have to say, which is a shame, really, because I'm sure it is quite a beautiful island. But it doesn't really lend itself to exploration. So I don't really need a cafe. I have plenty of food and drink with me. So I think I'm going to just head back to the massive lift back up to the bridge and head on over this quite spectacular third bridge, and that will take me to the mainland of Shikoku, just over there, and the end of my walk for today. There's no real point in hanging around this island. I think I've seen everything I can see, or everything I'm permitted to see, so there doesn't seem to be much point in wasting any more time here. So I won't. Thinking about it, this is the second joint anchorage. So this is the anchorage for the second bridge and the third bridge. And just look at that mass of concrete. It's huge. I think it really brings home quite just what a huge, immense engineering task these bridges actually were. All right, I'm not going to lie. I have to say, Umeshima was a little bit of a disappointment. I think it could be quite a beautiful island, but it's just not a very welcoming island, unless I'm missing something really very important. But I don't think I am. But anyway, in the end, I didn't really come to see Umashima. I came to walk the three bridges. And so, without any further ado, it's time to launch myself onto the third of those bridges. The third, appropriately enough, Kurushima Bridge. As I said, this is the longest of the three bridges, with a length of 1,570 meters and a main span of 1,030 meters.
The one final thing I'd say about Umashima is there's some sort of glamping accommodation on the island. I did glimpse it and it did look very nice. I would like to stay there someday perhaps. I do just wonder if all of the signs thinking about it were maybe something to do with that. I don't think so, but there's always that possibility. Anyway, if I ever had the chance, I would certainly like to try staying there. As I say, the island itself looked very beautiful. Just one more thing about the island, actually. I was right about general cars not being allowed to enter the island. This sign says that there's no access for general cars.
You can't quite see him now, but there was a man who just rode past and he was wearing a huge fleece jacket. It's about 33, 34, 35 degrees today. I honestly don't know how he could do that. I don't know whether to be shocked or actually quite impressed.
I said earlier that the cycling paths have very gentle inclines when they join the bridges and leave the bridges. That's true enough, but thinking back to when I cycled the route, it must be about 20 years ago now, one thing I really do remember is not just the ice cream in Hakata, but just how steep those inclines actually felt by the end of the journey. In fact, I don't mind admitting that on the slope up to the bridge in Oshima, I'm pretty sure that I gave up cycling and just walked.
While I've been walking, I've been thinking about the name Umashima, which of course is the island where I got off the bus this morning, and the island I called in at rather unsuccessfully earlier. As I said, the name means horse island, and thinking about it, I can think of 3 islands with the same name, Umashima. Now, the name of this horse island, the one I called in at earlier, is said to come from the fact that the Imabari domain, so a group of samurai in other words, used to graze horses here, or there, during the Edo period. Interesting. I assume that the other Umashimas got their names in a similar way. To be honest, looking at quite how steep the hills on the island are, I find it difficult to believe that any horses were ever grazed there, but who am I to argue with the history books? I do find it quite interesting, though, that the island would have been so much connected with the grazing of horses that it would actually be called Horse Island. Anyway, apparently that's the explanation, so, well, believe it or not. I think I believe it, but I do find it surprising. Anyway, you live and learn.
By the way, there are 2 other land connections between the mainland, Honshu, and Shikoku. One of them is the Seto Ohashi, which links Okayama and Kagawa. And the other one is the route that links Kobe with Shikoku via Awajishima. across the Kaikyo Ohashi Bridge and the Naruto-kyo Bridge. However, the Shimanami Kaido is the only one where you can walk or cycle. So this experience is really pretty special, I think.
Okay, so this is the coast of the mainland of Shikoku. So I've basically finished all three bridges. Now, there is, just up on the hill, just coming into this shot now, there is an observatory. But, as I said about the lighthouse in Umashima, it's hot, it's humid, and to be honest, it's hazy enough that I'm not sure climbing all the way up there would be useful. So I think today I'm going to give it a miss. By the way, there's something I realised I didn't mention about the bridges, and so before I get off the bridges, I suppose I'd better tell you. The construction work on all three of the Kurushima bridges began on the 15th of May, 1988, and all three bridges opened for service on the 1st of May, 1999. So, I suppose as close as makes no difference, they took 11 years to build. I think given the size and the complexity of the whole project, the enormity of the construction, 11 years is really not so bad. What do you think? All right, this is where the cycling path, and the walking path for that matter, leaves the expressway. So I need to walk down this nice, gentle slope back to normal roads. I think there is a railway station about 20 minutes walk from here, so I will head there, I think. It's quite noticeable how few cyclists there are now compared to earlier this morning. I suppose they all set off early to beat the heat, which makes sense, makes complete sense. I'm only out now, and it's nearly 2 o'clock now. I'm only out now because it's taken physically this long to walk, but I've enjoyed it, and I think the weather today has been actually quite kind. I think had it been a perfect blue sky and blazing hot sunshine like it has been for the past 2 or 3 days, it would have been, well, I think it would have been a nightmare, really. It's hot enough now, and as you can see, it's quite cloudy. It's quite hazy. But even so, it's hot and it's humid. So I think had it been sunny, it would have been even worse. I'll tell you one thing, this slope down from the bridge is gentle enough, but precisely because it is gentle, it's so long. And gentle though it may be, it is a gradient. I'm certainly glad I'm not biking up it, or walking up it for that matter even.
It really does remind me of biking up the slope at the very beginning of the Kurushima bridges in Oshima all those years ago.
All right, let's quickly review today's walk. It's been quite a humid, sweaty walk, but the scenery has been remarkably beautiful, and I'm really glad I came today. I love the inland sea, and in fact, one of my favorite train journeys in the whole of Japan is the journey across the bridge that basically parallels the Shimanami Kaido, the bridge that links Okayama and Kagawa. In other words, the Seto Ohashi Bridge. The Seto Ohashi is a combined rail and road bridge with the railway under the expressway. You can see a video of a journey across the bridge on my channel, and I'll leave a link in the description for this video. The Seto Inland Sea, the sea between Honshu and Shikoku basically, is really a spectacularly beautiful area. And I think actually walking across part of it, as I've done today, could well actually be the best way to enjoy it. Of course, crossing the bridges in a car or a bus, or even for that matter, cycling is all well and good. But I think walking across the bridges gives you the time to actually appreciate the scenery. And today, in that sense, has truly been a superb walk. So what I'm going to do now is, as I say, head to a station and ultimately head back to Imabari. And from there, I'm going to catch the bus back to the mainland later today at some point. But for this walk, well, that's about it, I think. Thank you very much for coming with me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again in another video very soon. For now though, from the Kurushima Kaikyo Ohashi, goodbye.